We are very excited to start because this is a new chapter. So for anyone that's spaced out, and I hope no one did, on our beautiful previous chapter, which I found like incredible and really helped me, got into fresh chapter. If you also want to be helped by the previous chapter, ask me, I'll send you the recordings. But this is now a fresh chance. So what are we doing now? Well, just to overview where we're walking in this guide to life called the Tanya. The first 17 chapters, we're focusing on creating a love and a fear of God. Because when we have that love and fear in place, everything else is natural. If I love God, I want to be with him. I want to serve him because that's how I'm with him. If I love God, I want to give to him. I want to serve. That's how I'm with him. That's what I give to him. That's how he and I are one. I don't want to do anything wrong because that separates us. So if I have my love and fear in place, everything else is just natural, which is why the verse says, so it's so close to serve God. I thought it was actually quite challenging. If you really love and really fear, it is so close. It is so natural. But by the time we finished those 70 chapters, we said, well, I need a lot of mental focus and work and study and contemplation and meditation. Those are all big, heavy duty words to create this love and fear. I think I need something a little more American Western world style, meaning easier, faster, result oriented. So the author said, oh, sure, no problem. You can work on two things at once. And from chapter 18 to 25, we were discussing uncovering the natural love that we all have. And explaining how we have this love. But normally it's a situation of self-sacrifice that triggers it, but how we could trigger it ourselves through really deep thoughts on the absolute unity of God, how all is God, how is nothing but God, and how if I ever separate myself from him, this is like the danger of idolatry. So in a sense, chapters 18 through 25 are deeper concepts than chapters 1 through 17. But the goal, the road is shorter because I'm not creating, I'm uncovering. Because every one of us, whoever we are, whatever we've done, whatever we're doing, God and I are one. We're bound up. We're a piece of him, and nothing can ever take that away. So after chapter 25, we're done. Amazing. I know how to create a love. I know how to uncover love. Okay, I have like a few hundred years of work ahead of me, but everything's in place now. So what's left? So what the Rebbe started doing in chapter 26 is discussing the foundational negative traits we want to uproot and what we want to implant instead to give us a godly life. In chapter 26, 27, and 28, we discuss basically with a lot of very interesting, very practical and relevant aspects to it, uprooting sadness. Sadness is the killer of my joy and of my Judaism. I can't be godly when I'm sad. I'm not close with God in a godly place, alive when I'm sad. So sadness is something we have to uproot. And we spent 3 chapters really, really, really removing it. And again, those 3 chapters can always re-listen to because it's the work we all need to do. And now we're starting chapter 29. So 26, 27, and 28 were don't be sad. Don't be sad over the physical. Don't be sad over the spiritual transgressions. Don't be sad over thoughts that are bombarding you during the day, which you're not thinking, so you're not transgressing, but there's still a distraction. Don't be sad when those thoughts come and bombard you during your prayers or Torah study. 26, 27, 28. What happens in 29? In 29, we begin focusing on the other enormously negative problem that we could just morph into, which is apathy, coldness, indifference, sort of like just a whole general lethargy and heaviness in my relationship to God and possibly to the world as a whole. We're going to discuss in chapter 29 2 strategies to remove this very, very severe problem in one's relationship with God. The bulk, like a good 85% of chapter 29 is the first strategy, and the last 15% is the second strategy. In chapter 30, we're going to discuss a third strategy. So we have 2 in 29 and 1 in 30. The Rebbe gives us 3 different options, as we'll discuss why we need 3, how to remove this indifference, coldness, apathy in our relationship with God. In chapter 31, we discuss the mop-up work, meaning the strategies could be really tough. There could be really serious side effects. Got no choice. Got to get rid of this illness, but there's still serious side effects, and that we deal with in chapter 31. All right, so now that we know where we are and where we're going, let's look at chapter 29. But after we completely solved all your life's problems, because we totally removed any reason to ever be sad, physically, spiritually, transgressions, the potential of a transgression, it's all good, it's all godly, you're amazing, your life is amazing, your service of God is amazing, you are so blessed, you are so fortunate, you are turning over worlds. So what's left? One other issue. But there's one more thing. We've got to give counsel to the soul of the Benoni, to give counsel to people how to deal with this problem in themselves. That sometimes the itim rabim, and actually for some people, many times, this could be a frequent occurrence. Yesh lahem timtum halev. They have an affliction, a spiritual disease, that the Rebbe calls timtum halev, the dullness of the heart. Timtum, it's like in Hebrew, modern Hebrew, you use the term mitum tam. Same word, timtum, a dullness of the heart. Shenasa ke'even, that the heart feels like a stone. And he can't open his heart, not for nothing. In no fashion can he open his heart. Even for the way we have to serve God with our heart, zutfila, which is the service of prayer. Prayer is with the heart. Prayer is in the heart. It's hard to envision prayer without your heart involved. But if someone's heart is so dull, if someone's heart feels stone-like, well, how are you praying? How are you properly praying? Now, we just discussed prayer. We had an entire chapter officially talking about how to deal with thoughts that bombard you when you're doing something holy like praying or studying, but also really focusing us on prayer. Prayer, you have to give God your heart. In your heart, with your heart, that's prayer. So what do you do if your heart's dull? How do you pray? Now, it's interesting because the Alter Rebbe here is saying, and it makes a lot of sense, that when a person falls under this sickness, this ailment that obviously existed in the times of the Alter Rebbe some 200 plus years ago, and for sure exists today, the illness of indifference, apathy, dullness, heaviness, sluggishness, slowness, blondness. He's saying the first thing that's going to fall apart is your prayers. Which makes sense because, as we're saying, prayer is in the heart and with the heart. So if your in and with heart is not functioning really in an emotional, heartfelt way, it's pretty obvious that your prayers are going to fall apart. You might still be mechanically saying the words. You might even look inside. You might even pronounce them correctly. You might even say them out loud. But you're probably not going to be praying very well because your heart's not going to be resonating. And that's what prayer is about, the heart. But I want to ask you, what happens to you? What have you experienced? If you've ever had this, of course, if you've never had this, you would have no clue. And that's a beautiful answer. But if you've ever had this sense of feeling indifferent in your relationship to God, what falls apart by you? The Alter Rebbe is saying your prayer is going to fall apart. Anyone had any other experiences of things that started falling apart when they stopped feeling alive and caring and passionate in their relationship to God? Now, if no one can answer, and that means no one's ever experienced this, that's awesome.
No,
answer.
it seemed like my whole life fell apart. Everything.
Your life fell apart. Okay, I get that because God is our life.
Everything fell apart.
And once we stop feeling, it feels like everything falls apart. That makes perfect sense, Begachaya. Sarah, what were you going to say? Sarah? Galaxy tab, Sarah?
I agree. Once you stop feeling like
What'd you say, Firma? You agree with Fegachaya? Just everything falls apart?
you stop feeling, I mean, I'm a very emotional person. If I'm not feeling, then I'm not gonna be able to do much of good for anything.
So what Firma's saying is what Fegachaya said. Okay, Fegachaya, you and Firma are on the same page with this. Fegachaya said
Yay.
everything fell apart. And Firma's saying the same thing, because Firma says, well, if you're an emotional person, you're a passionate person, then your relationship to God is what it should be, which is emotional and passionate. And once the heart's not resonating, so it doesn't seem like there's much of anything left.
Yeah, I like that you're using the word resonating, because that's like a big thing in the law of similars or homeopathy. Resonating.
Anyone else? So we got Fegachaya, we got Firma. Anyone else? I thought Sarah was raising her hand.
Yeah, I did. I think the first thing to go is relationships with people.
Oh. I understand why Sarah, though, with her background says that, and I think it makes a lot of sense. How can you be there for others when you're in such a deadened state? Because in other words, what you're saying is the rituals of Judaism, you could still keep doing ritually. So you could still keep up the practice without much feeling, but you could still be doing it. But relationships with people, that's hard to do on automatic pilot, mechanically. So that makes a lot of sense why that would be something that would fall apart when your heart's not there. How do you have real relationships with other people? That makes so much sense. What Fegachaya and Firma said makes so much sense. What Sarah said makes so much sense. Anyone else? Any other thoughts? And
So
again, what the
we're
Alter
all
Rebbe
right.
is saying, of course, is so true. Just wondering for other people their input on it.
Well, I just kind of wanted to say something also, because when I was kind of in that space, the only thing I could do is just kind of like be in limbo, you know what I'm saying? And ride it through.
So
Does
what
that
you're
make
actually
any
thinking
sense?
about is what we do at that point. So that's what we're going to discuss in this chapter. And I understand what you're saying about being in limbo and riding it through. The Rebbe is going to give other suggestions, but sometimes I totally understand what you're saying by that. Just sort of wait for the wave to pass. Because sometimes we just feel we just have to wait, ride it through. I totally understand that. So the Alter Rebbe's feeling, as he's expressing it, is prayer. And again, the reason why prayer will be such an obvious victim, though I understand what Sarah was saying about relationships, and I understand what Fegachaya and Firma were saying about everything, but prayer, again, is supposed to be a very heartfelt process. It is a relationship. Sarah said relationships. Prayer is the time when you're really focusing and serving as a relationship. And therefore, it's hard to have that relationship when you're not feeling, when your heart is, as the Rebbe was saying, stone-like. But it gets worse. Begam, and also, lif'amim, sometimes, lo yuchal lihilochem im hayetzer, he's not able to battle his evil inclination, l'kadosh atma v'mutar lo, to sanctify himself in the realm of the holy, b'pnei kvedus shebelibo, because of the heaviness of his heart. Now remember, the Rebbe here is talking to a very holy person. Our assumption here is this is Ms., Mrs., Mr. Rabbi Benoni, really holy Jew. But when this holy person, his heart stops responding, first his prayer falls apart, and the second thing that falls apart is his serving God by sanctifying himself in the realm of the permissible. What we call in the lexicon of Hasidic thought, the word iskafia. Iskafia means crushing the evil, not giving it a voice. Even here, when we're calling the evil, it means something permissible, but I'm sacrificing it, I'm putting it on the side, because I'm putting God first. Now, we had a long discussion about this because we just recently learned this, not in chapter 28, but in chapter 27. I'm still grateful because I still try every single day to not open my phone for any social media purposes until after I daven, until after I pray. And I'm very grateful to the class for that, because that's a very beautiful feeling every morning. So that was an example. And again, we had a big discussion then. Some people said they put God before their coffee. We had lots of different ideas, setting the table Thursday night to already bring in the Sabbath energy. Lots of different ideas of what we can do to put God first, to sanctify yourself in the realm of the permissible. We're not talking about holding back from the forbidden. We're not talking about doing what you have to do. We're talking about doing what's optional. We're talking about refraining from things permissible, but perhaps distracting, perhaps not in sync with my relationship with God. So do we see this in the converse? Meaning, you could just raise your hand if this is true, if you've experienced this. When you're excited about your relationship with God, do you see that you strive to add more extras? Not just to do properly the obligations, but to go beyond, to be extra godly, extra refined. All right, you can raise your hand. When you're in that space, do you feel it? Do you try? When you're all excited and passionate about your relationship with God, you just want to do more and give more and be more focused. That's what we mean by sanctifying yourself within the permissible, because you're sanctifying yourself. These are extras. There's a halachic, a legal debate. Is this a commandment that one's obligated to give God extras, which might sound like a little bit of an oxymoron? And that's a discussed point in among the sages. But from our practical perspective, I'm talking about giving God extras. I'm talking about doing beyond the requirement, because I'm so excited, because I so much want to be as close to God as possible. So when I'm excited and inspired in my relationship, I'm doing this. I'm sanctifying myself in the permissible. I'm doing extras, not have-tos, but want-tos. I'm looking to see how I can deepen and grow in my relationship to God and give him more and give him more and hold back more and give him more. That's what's happening. Now, if a person would stop caring, does it make sense that this would be one of the first things to fall apart? Because this was all extras. You know it's extra. You know you don't have to, like, the example I gave. Do you have to only open your phone after you pray? Where is that written? Do you have to set your Sabbath table on Thursday night? Where is that written? Do you have to study before you're allowed your morning coffee? Where is that written? None of these are written. None of these are obligatory. That's the point. So when you start getting cold in your heart to God, obviously the first thing to go is all the extras that weren't required anyway, but you were just so excited in this relationship that you want to give more and do more and be more and withhold from the other distracting stuff more. So that's why all that very quickly falls apart if you lose the feeling in your heart, if you aren't in sync with why you're doing all this. Now, I don't know if someone has gone through this and then picked up the pieces, meaning they've had that high, they really are feeling for God, and then they stopped caring and stopped feeling, and everything sort of fell apart, and then they picked up the pieces. Anyone had that whole journey? All right, well, that's the journey we're going to be discussing in this chapter. So the Rebbe is going to say now that we quickly sketched out the illness, we want to give a cure. And as I said, the Rebbe is going to give 3 cures. They're not short paragraphs. They're very long expositions. This is a very serious spiritual illness. In other words, we've been discussing for 3 chapters a very serious spiritual illness called sadness, called depression. Very serious spiritual illness. That's why the Alter Rebbe devoted 3 chapters to it. And I think it's more relevant today than when he wrote it. And now the Rebbe is discussing the other big spiritual killer, the other huge spiritual illness. And again, honestly, I think it's more relevant today than when the Alter Rebbe wrote it. Don't care, don't feel. And that's why we're going to spend 2 chapters fighting it with 3 strategies. A very long strategy we detail in this chapter, and then a shorter one, and then another whole strategy, which is the entire chapter 30. But before we get into the Alter Rebbe's strategies, I'm asking you your opinion or your perspective, or based on what you've experienced in your own journey, what do you think is a cure for this? Anyone have the cure they would suggest?
I just have an observation that it's not once that it happened, and I know it's going to go away, and it helps me. So just be patient, do something to help to get rid of this feeling.
That's so nice. That's actually exactly what Fegachai, I think, meant. When she said, I think Fegachai said something very similar. She said she's going to like wait out the wave, ride through the wave of it. I think what she's saying is what you're saying, Rachel, that like
Right.
experience this and it's like a wave, and you're going to get through it. It's going to recede. It's going to go away.
Exactly.
You've got to hold that in your perspective. And that's even when you're not feeling very much, that's a very positive perspective to have. I've been here and I know it's going to subside. I know it's going to get better. I think that perspective we could use for a lot of different things in our life. Like, let's say you're having stress with a child and you could think, oh, been here, done that. With a different child, with an older sibling who, thank God, grew up and is in a good space today. They gave me a run for my money when they were younger. So this child as well, you know. Okay, this is a challenging time, maybe a challenging few years, or maybe it seems longer than that. But I've experienced this already. I've seen God come through.
I managed to read the Chronicles of Narnia. It was one of my children's sets of books during that big time period like that. And what I understand is that when I have grief, I need to express it. It's not that I want to be stuck or anything. I do have to express the grief, you know. And I watched this movie once where it was called A Stranger Among Us, where they kept saying again and again and again through the movie that God counts the tears of women. So there must be something about that.
So you're saying that's a way. So what you and Rachel said before is when you're going through this, just sort of wait it out and know it will pass. And now what you're saying is maybe there's an idea of actually feeling the grief, and that's part of the process.
Right. Yeah. And letting it out, because, you know, it's like we're this, you know, compact being, you know, that when there's grief, there's like a klipa, or we actually have layers and layers of klipot caused by, you know, pharmaceutical medications, because they're all
things.
What?
Caused by this world, caused by
trauma is the first at the core, and then it attempts to come out through any, you know, orifice, or, you know, the skin is the biggest eliminatory organ, and then the doctors give us
but we're not going to go there. I don't want to go there tonight.
I know, I'm so sorry.
But I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree entirely.
Okay, great.
Anyone else? Any other ideas?
Thank you very much for keeping me moving forward.
Sure. Any other ideas?
I don't know. I usually, I know it sounds crazy, but I usually write a letter to the IHL, put more tzedakah in my tzedakah box, and then I say, okay, and I add something into my davening that I wasn't doing before, like forcing
So what
myself.
Simcha's saying doesn't sound crazy at all. It sounds very logical. What Simcha's saying is she adds godliness. She's writing a letter to the Rebbe, so that's a godly thing. She's adding in her prayers, even though we're saying your prayers are going to be falling apart at this moment. She's going to add more to her prayers. She's going to add more charity. She's combating the evil with more godliness. Now, it's very interesting because what she is saying is seemingly the classical answer. Like, that's what we should all be saying, and that's what should work, and that's, you know, what we should, it will be like the knee-jerk response. Well, if this is such an evil, if there's so much pain and lack of feeling and falling apart, well, obviously it makes sense to add more godliness. And yet, that's not the answers the Rebbe gives. I'm saying the Rebbe gives 3 strategies, and that's not any of them. And I don't disagree with what Simcha's saying, because obviously it's always good to add godliness. But I think because this darkness is so thick, because there's such intensity here, this could really, you know, suck someone in the intensity of the darkness. It's not going to be enough just adding the godliness, even though adding godliness in general is our go-to. And also, obviously, here it could only help, but it's not going to be enough. So let's see what the Alter Rebbe is saying instead of like Simcha's answer that seemingly is the answer. Well, the Rebbe says, I don't have to give you my answer. I'm going to give you the Holy Zohar's answer. The Zohar is the most foundational work of Kabbalistic thought, written by Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and his assembly, lost for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And this is what the Zohar says in this type of situation. The Amar Rav, Mesifta Began Eden, that the Rav, the head of the heavenly yeshiva, the heavenly academy in Gan Eden, said, most of the Zohar is Aramaic, so this is Aramaic. If you have this thick bolt of wood and it's not catching fire, what do you do for it to catch fire? You smash it, you splinter it. Because if it's in smaller splinters, smaller fragments, then it's going to catch fire. But if it's this big, thick wood, it's not going to catch fire. Well, that was metaphoric, because then they continue in this discussion in the heavenly schools. Gufa, when you have a body that the light of the neshama is not shining, it also has to be crushed. So this concept that the Alter Rebbe is going to really, really elaborate on is all found in these few words in the Zohar. The Zohar is saying, and it's a wonderful metaphor for it, because we've all probably made a campfire at some point in our life. Yeah, that really big, thick wood, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's too thick. It's not going to catch fire. You need little splinters to catch fire. So you need to take that big, thick wood and crush it, smash it, hack it, break it up. And then when it's the little splinters, it can catch fire easily. And that's a metaphor for us. When a person is going down this road of apathy, this road of indifference, this road of coldness, this road of lethargy, when you're going down this road, you're like this big, thick wood that's not catching fire. The light of your soul is not shining. It can't catch. So you think, okay, well, let me pour more fuel. Let me add in my prayers and add in my Torah study and add in my charity. I'm going to add more fuel, more godly light. No, the Zohar says that doesn't really work. You have to chop up the wood. That's when it can catch fire. And that's what's happening inside of you. If your body is not aflame, if your body didn't catch the fire of your soul, it's like that big, thick clog of wood. It's too thick. It needs to be broken. And by breaking it, which here is not meant as physically breaking it, but emotionally breaking yourself, things fall into little pieces that can catch the fire of godliness. And this is, in short, and now we're going to read it in long, But this is, in short, this very, seemingly very non-Hasidic strategy written in Tanya for many pages. Crush yourself. Emotionally crush yourself. Why? Because for most of us, self and animal soul is one entity. It's one fused unit. So when my animal has so taken over, when I'm so like thick and shut down and I don't care, I don't even care that I don't care, indifferent, we can't add more fuel. It's not going to help. It's like that thick clog of wood. It's not going to catch fire. We have to emotionally break our heart, because the heart and the animal are one. And through this, emotionally crush the animal to allow myself to feel again. So what is this example of crushing our heart? That is what someone just asked me that. That is what the Rebbe is now going to detail. And the Rebbe is going to give you 5 very specific examples of how one can emotionally crush themselves. Now, obviously, there's countless examples, but from the 5 that the Rebbe enumerates, you'll be able to apply your own, what most best works for you in this goal. And as I said, it doesn't sound like a very Hasidic goal, and it doesn't sound like a traditional piece of Hasidic thought or should be in the Tanya, but it is. It's original to the Tanya because this is a really severe illness. Once you don't care, once you don't feel, everything else falls apart. It all becomes meaningless. It's just like blah, tasteless, dull, dust, meaningless. An incredibly dangerous place to be in your Judaism. So since it's so dangerous, the Rebbe is giving a very intense cure. Like if you think of chemotherapy, chemotherapy is really, really, really bad for your body. Do we not know that? We know that. But the sense is the other option's worse. Well, there'll be side effects. There will be side effects, but the other option's still worse. And that's what the Rebbe is saying here. I'm going to give you some very serious medicine, and it's bad for you. 100%. And there'll be side effects. I said we have an entire chapter, chapter 31, to mop up the side effects. But this is worse. Because if you don't care, if you don't feel, if you're indifferent, if it's like, whatever, blah, meaningless, I'm going to sit at a Seder, I'm going to munch on some matzah, I'm going to munch on some maror, and I'm going to wonder when it's over. If it's all just meaningless and rituals, it's meaningless. Everything's going to fall apart. And that's what
Viktor Frankl calls this the existential vacuum, a place where you're just like stuck like that, you know.
And this is what the Alter Rebbe is going to be discussing now for 2 chapters, predating Viktor Frankl by about 200 years. And but Viktor Frankl was a Jew. He knew what he was talking about. He had that Jewish spark. All right.
We must have both tapped into our collective consciousness, or
definitely, there's a very
our
strong
collective unconsciousness.
Jewish feeling. Now, before we start, and again, I don't necessarily expect that anyone ever did this, but did anyone here ever try this, like just intuitively, or because they've learned this in Tanya, or just on their own, like bashing the evil, bashing themselves to remove the evil that was gripping them? Trying to smash that evil inside of them? As we're going to see, that's what the Rebbe is really recommending to do. Now, again, it could be a little dangerous because you could get stuck in that negative space, or you can extricate yourself very quickly, as we're going to discuss. So we are 2 lines from the top of page Lamed Vav. Perush, meaning to say, Nehoira dinishmasa. The light that's supposed to be shining in your body is the light of the soul. And if it's not shining, the light of soul, the light of intellect, isn't shining through the coarseness of the body. It's not going to be controlling it. the body's physicality is darkening, is overwhelming, is subsuming that light. So you don't feel that light at all. You just feel the darkness, the physical. And here we're talking about a very, starting off, I mean, it's not going to stay forever this path if he continues to not care. But at this point, he's starting off, he's a very godly person. So he understands about the greatness of God, and he contemplates and meditates and thinks in a very present sense about the greatness of God. But it's not really catching in his brain. He's going through the motions, but there's no click. Because if your brain is full of God, you have an automatic control over the heart. And if the heart's not under the control of the mind's not really in sync with what it seemingly is thinking about. Because they're so coarse. So how do you get to this state? How do we take a Jew, God's only child, a Jew, every soul is from God's very essence. How do we take a Jew and make them someone who's like, I don't know, don't care, not interested, whatever? How does that happen? Whoever says, because the klipa is really, really thick. The forces of evil are really, really thick here, really tough here. Remember, we spoke before metaphorically of the evil like the eagle that's lifting herself up over the light of the holiness of the godly soul, darkening her light, concealing, blocking, darkening her light. So here, every Jew, every one of us is God's only child. Every one of us has enormous spiritual power. You are far holier than you can ever imagine. And every one of you is that you I'm talking about. We're all far holier than we can imagine. So how do we fall into a space of saying, don't care? Because everything has to be balanced. So if we're so powerful, which we are, if we're so holy, which we are, we're all old souls. We've all been in this world many times. We've all accrued much, much merit. We all have very well muscled through years of practice souls. So therefore the evil is also really strong to balance. And this really strong evil is blocking all that light, is darkening it. So we are completely out of touch with ourselves. When a Jew says, I don't care, completely out of touch with self. Because everything in ourselves is screaming, I desperately care. I desperately want this relationship with God. Ulazos, and therefore, terech levatsha. That's why I'm saying you have to smash it. Because if the force of evil is so strong, that's blocking your light, and that's why you don't think you care, we need to smash that force that's making you cold to yourself. Ulashpila la'afar, throw it down to the dust. Dehainu, now, well, that's metaphoric. How do I do this with an animal soul that I can't put in my hands and throw down? How do I smash to the dust that which I can't touch? So the Rebbe says, Dehainu, likvoa itim, to actually make appointments with yourself. Put it in your calendar. Fixed times. Lahashpil atzmo, to denigrate yourself. To smash the evil inside your heart. Lios nivza be'enav nimas, to be so low in your eyes. Kakasuv, as is written. This is a verse from Psalms, from Tehillim. V'leiv nishbar, ruach nishbar. So this is in chapter 51 of Psalms. We actually mentioned this for a different reason in chapter 26 of Tanya. The verse says, King David said, Leiv nishbar, ruach nishbara. Leiv nishbar, a broken heart. Ruach nishbara, a broken spirit. No, not my spirit that's broken. the spirit of evil is broken. The verse says, Zivche Elokim, Ruach Nishbra Lev Nishbar. A zevach means a sacrifice, an offering, a korban. Now, in the Chumash, when we enumerate the offerings, as we've been doing for the past few Torah portions, the term for God is always Havaya, the most foundational name of 4 letters. Throughout this section of the offerings, we always speak about Reach Nichleach LaHavaya, a pleasing scent for God, Havaya. We never speak of Elokim in the offerings because Elokim is judgment. That's not what we're trying to access. We're trying to access kindness and compassion, Havaya. We're not trying to access judgment. So King David said, Zivche Elokim, all right, I know how I get to Havaya. I know I elicit God's compassion and kindness, but what about God's judgment? Is there any offering that will be able to elicit God's judgment, to make that judgment good? Ruach Nishbar Lev Nishbar, yes. The offering is not an animal, it's not a sheep, it's not a lamb, it's not a ram, it's not a goat, it's not fine flour or oil or wine or incense. It's your heart. A broken heart. There's an expression among the Hasidic masters, nothing is as whole as a broken heart. Lev Nishbar. When we smash, when we crush our heart, as we will explain, probably not today, how, that's a zevach, that's an offering for God's trait of judgment. Zivche Elokim, Ruach Nishbar. When you offer this offering to Elokim, to judgment, because you're not offering an animal, you're offering your own animal, this causes your broken heart, breaks the spirit of evil on your heart. And then your heart is free. And then your heart can feel. And then your heart's a Jewish heart that passionately cares about Hashem. So Zivche Elokim, I want to offer a sacrifice to Elokim, to God's trait of strength, of judgment, of justice. Lev Nishbar, offer him your heart. And by crushing your own heart, Ruach Nishbara, you crush the spirit of evil on your heart. You're free of that clamping, imprisoning coldness. And then you can again restore your heart. And you can have a heart that feels. You can have a godly Jewish heart pumping inside of you, and so much caring and so much wanting to connect to God. He has Sitra Achra. So this broken spirit is a spirit of evil. Now, what does this work? If I break my heart, I'm breaking the spirit of evil. Why? Because in a regular person, except for the tzaddik, except for the absolutely godly, the body and the animal have become like one entity. Meaning, inside of ourselves, there's a physical component, my physical body, and the body of a Jew is a very godly body. God chose our bodies. God's essence and being chose our bodies, but it's a physical body. And then I have 3 spiritual energies inside my body. I have really the core me, my godly soul. I also have a competitor for the throne, my animal soul. I also have my evil inclination, that real pure force of evil that controls the animal soul and gets it to fight me. So what's happened is sort of like you can envision, the moving social pieces in like a girls' class or something. So there became the ins and the outs and the connecteds and the separates. So the godly soul like detached from this whole party. She's separate. But the animal and the evil inclination and the body became like besties, the best of the best of the best, the closest of the closest of the closest, because our animal nature and our body's nature are so similar. The animal is godly. An animal soul is a soul. It's godly energy. But it's godly energy of the animal that just wants to lower itself, descend, feed me, indulgence in the passions and pleasures of this world. which is like basically what my body wants as well. So that's why they're good friends. So therefore, what's happened in the average Jew, not the greatest and holiest, but just the regular Jews, us, is that our animal, our evil inclination, and our body have fused like they're one entity, which generally is not good at all. It's generally not a positive sentence. But in this case, it's an advantage. Why is it an advantage? Because I want to smash that spirit of evil that's clamping down on my heart. But how do I touch it? How do I find it? How do I grip it? Very easily, by gripping your heart. Because since the animal and the evil inclination and the body are so fused, are so one, they're such awesome, horrible partners with each other. If I go for the heart and I work on changing that heart, automatically the energy on all these other levels will follow suit. So that's why Ruach Nishbar, Lev Nishbar. That's why if I crush my heart, automatically the spirit of evil is crushed. Because that spirit of evil of my animal soul, my evil inclination, and my physical heart are like this. Crush the heart, automatically you crush the evil gripping the heart. So I can't see the evil. I can't touch the evil. I can't measure the evil. I can't lift it up. How can I fight it? By fighting its good partner. By fighting what you can fight. That evil energy in your heart or any sins committed. When you fight those, automatically the other forces dissipate. Which in and of itself, that, if nothing else, is so worth this whole journey. Shenefesh HaChiyunis, because the vital animal soul, Hamachaya Haguf, which gives life to the body. Of course, as we learned all the way in chapter 1, the only reason the animal soul can give life to the body is because the godly soul is feeding it life to give life to the body. But we're not going to go through that. We're not going to say that. He betakfa kitol dasa is as strong, and as we learned earlier, stronger than when she was born. The libo in the heart of this person. And this person's a Beinoni. This person doesn't even sin. But his animal soul is as strong and stronger than when he was born. It's stronger because we've lived physical lives. We eat, strengthen the physical, strengthen the animal. We drink, strengthen the physical, strengthen the animal. We indulge in all of this world offers, strengthen the physical and strengthen the animal. So as strong as when it was born, nimtza hihi adam atzmo. So therefore, it comes out. So for the regular person, besides the tzaddik, his animal nature is him. The advantage is, if I want to crush the animal, crush him. Emotionally crush the person, you automatically crush the animal. So co-joined, so attached to the person as well. All right. Wow. I can't believe our time. I'm so impressed. Does someone have something they'd like to share? Something they'd like to thank God for this week?
Can I first ask a question about
Sure.
this concept? Is there an inyan like your in your preparations for Pesach and your cleaning and in your, like, does that kind of have something to do with scouring or cleaning up?
Absolutely. Perfect timing. Thank you for mentioning that. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a incident that happened in Lubavitch Yeshiva when it was first started in the early 1900s, that the principal of the yeshiva was Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who became the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe. At that time, his father, Rebbe Rashab, was the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was the dean, and his only son, the Rebbe Rayatz, who became the Rebbe Rayatz, was the principal. And this was shortly before Passover, shortly before Pesach, and someone came and applied for the school. This was new and exciting, and they only took very serious students, and like, whoa, to be accepted here, that was big stuff. And there was this young man that came to apply, and he was very brilliant and very knowledgeable and looked coarse and sort of full of himself. And the Rebbe didn't know what to do. Should I take him or should I not? He has an amazing head, but we also need a heart. We also need to find character traits. So he turned to his father, to the dean, to the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he said, take him on 2 conditions. Give him the most difficult jobs, to use the word from you, scouring for Passover. Everyone has to clean, but he's got to scour. Most difficult jobs, physically, arduous, and pile on him lots of extra godliness. He has to learn. He's going to be working all day cleaning, and somehow he has to find time to learn and study these very deep tractics of Hasidic discourses and thoughts, and you're going to test him on them every day. So here he was slaving away physically and slaving away spiritually. And the Rebbe Yat says that when he looked around the Seder table, because the whole yeshiva ate together, he saw the face of this man, and it was unrecognizable. It wasn't the same face. It wasn't a coarse face. It was a refined, godly face he saw. So absolutely, Passover is deliberate design. God didn't make a mistake or oops, he didn't realize what all these laws would mean practically speaking. No, he knew exactly what he was doing. He knows exactly what he is doing. And as we clean, we can clean. We can change our insides. Sometimes it helps to like have a mantra, have something you want to change on the inside, and keep thinking it as you're cleaning the outside to rewire your brain and utilize the opportunity, because it's an auspicious opportunity to change. Sometimes it's nice to make this a family, we're all in this together pursuit, agree on some family good resolution for this year, our Passover cleaning up the inner junk resolution, and then everyone can support each other as we all work together on this. And sometimes you can look at yourself and say, okay, what do I know is a weakness that for sure to come out? Overreacting, feeling stressed, losing it. Well, what's for sure to come out in these next few weeks? Okay, that's what I'm not allowing out anymore. That's what I'm changing. I know my weakness. I know this. I have great opportunities to practice self-control. I know I'll have a lot of triggers. And this year, I say no. This year, I'm not doing it anymore. This year, I'm cleaning inside for Passover. So absolutely, Passover is outside, inside cleaning. It's a great opportunity to do everything we're talking about. Anyone else? Any thoughts of things they would like to thank God for? Things that happened over the past week that they're grateful?
I'll say something. Actually, I started out learning. Rabbi Shais Taub is doing 30 letters in 30 days, for the Rebbe Yud Aleph Nisan. So then I fell off, and now I got back on a little bit more. And one of the recent letters was, and a few of them had the Rebbe telling people that they don't write in enough. So I'm guilty, or just writing when they ask for something, but not telling good news. So I decided to take that on, to try to write in once a month.
Beautiful. Wow, that's beautiful.
So that it really made me feel good, because we were saying before about taking on stuff, and it's good to take on, but it's not good to put yourself in a failure train. To take it, you have to take on things that you
take on something doable.
Right.
Take on success.
Like I can't volunteer to do, half of all of Tehillim every Shabbos, for this, that, and the other. You have to keep it personally manageable. So I took on that. And then I'm debating, but I'm going to say this anyway. It's a little embarrassing for me, but I've had this bad habit for years, and especially since all that time ago that I went to social work school, that I have to get some sort of a newspaper or something in the house so that I can be current with what's going on for clients. And it just hasn't sat well with me. And I decided that as one of the birthday gifts for the Rebbe, I canceled the subscription to the Chicago Tribune for the Sunday paper, because it's a bunch of garbage anyway.
Yeah, it sure is.
So, wow, very impressive.
I mean, you know, I
A
should.
nice birthday present, very impressive.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda, but I'm like, I'm really happy I did that. And I'm also grateful to Hashem and the Rebbe. One of Chaya's kids needed a minor surgery and everything came out well to get the adenoids shaved down and stuff for him. So, but I was, you know, you could trust in Hashem, but you could be nervous at the same time.
Sure. Because we
So,
happen to be human. Absolutely.
yeah. Okay, so that's all the
Beautiful.
news
Lots of
that I
thank yous and
received.
beautiful work. Thank you for sharing, Sarah. Anyone else has something they would like to
Yeah,
say?
I'm really
Tanya's
grateful.
very inspirational in taking on stuff. So thanks for all the years.
Baruch Hashem. Vega Chaya, something you want to thank
Grateful that
God
I
for?
somehow managed to keep a roof over my head over the past month plus.
That
So,
is something
yay.
definitely you want to thank God for. I agree. Especially everything going on in Ukraine. We really appreciate that we have roofs over our heads and there are roofs and we're not moving and we're not running and we have our homes, and definitely something that we might have taken for granted and we can thank God for. Very beautiful, very appropriate. Thank you. Someone else has something they would like to thank God for?
I think I want to just say that, you know, I said last week that my granddaughter got engaged, but I'd like to really thank Hashem that I got to go to New York. Here I would never go in the month of Nisan. I've never gone in the month of Nisan. Here I got to go, and it's such a gift to be able to go to 770. I cannot describe it for anybody who has not been there, but the Rebbe and the power of the Rebbe there, you definitely feel like you're in the base of Migdash. You feel that power. And when I daven chakras there, I know you said it's holy when you think bad thoughts, but when you're in 770, you just can't think bad thought. Like
That's okay.
You're just taken over by the power, and you're just nullified in the power of being in such a holy, amazing, godly place where the Rebbe's energy is, and you're davening there. It's just the greatest gift to be able to do that. And I'm just like, you know, so grateful that I got to do that.
Baruch Hashem. Yeah, I saw the picture. I didn't know you were going. I was so happy for you that you went and were there with your beautiful granddaughter shining like that. Such a beautiful, beautiful moment. I'm so happy for you.
Yeah, I know, that was like Bailey took pictures, Belson, and she I guess she posted.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
Baruch Hashem.
Beautiful.
That was my bonus, was getting to go to the Rebbe, so that was my bonus. That's what
Baruch
anyway.
Hashem. The Simcha should always be in Crown Heights, so you always get that bonus. Someone else has something they'd like to thank God for?
Yeah. I also was fortunate. I'm due when my niece's wedding is gonna be, so I was able to celebrate with her, and I didn't really have the money to come that last second because the tickets were super expensive. And my husband pulled up, he had enough points on his credit card to cover one way, and then suddenly I got reimbursed from an old ticket that night. I just paid it. I wasn't sure I was going to pay it back. And the next morning, a reimbursement for the exact amount I spent came back.
Wow.
It was covered. And when I went there, I also had a really nice experience in 770. It was so rejuvenating to take care of myself spiritually, but being a busy mother and working, and it's hard to actually make time for it, and you're exhausted in the day and whatever. And tonight I was it feels so much better to learn than not do that, to do anything else to relax. It just fills my spiritual self up, which really helps me. It really clicked in my head that when I was there, that this is what I really need in my life, and so that's why I joined the share tonight. So thank you for this opportunity. But it was really amazing to have that clarity there.
It was amazing that you put it into practice, because sometimes you can be in this space of inspiration. It's all clear. It's all Hashem. You know it, you want it, you taste it. But then when you fall back into your own life, everything, you just sort of get everything falls apart. You get back in your routine, you get bogged down, pulled in a million plus directions. And that clarity, it's sort of like Shabbos and then the weekday. And that clarity that you have, and it's so clear, you just lose it all in the hustle bustle of life. So it's really special that you didn't lose it and you remembered and you came on and you learned and you shared that with us. And that's an amazing how Hashem came through for you. Hashem said, you want to go? I'm paying for the ticket. I'll make it work. That's Baruch Hashem. We should always merit to see it. Always merit to see that when we put forth our good effort for good causes, for good things, Hashem says, I'm taking care of it. Thank you, Geulas. Anyone else has something they would like to thank God for? All right. Well,
I'll thank God.
Simcha, yeah, let's hear.
The stitches in my hand were taken out yesterday, so thank God for that, and the trigger thumb's gone, so I'm happy that I got that done. I'm thankful that Mir Hashem on Thursday I'm going to visit my grandson in
Oh, that's so nice.
and then my son Hoodie and I are flying back on Sunday, and 5 hours later going on planes to Yud Aleph Nisan to New York.
Oh, wow.
And we're gonna
And
go.
Passover is going to take care of itself.
My house is completely done. I got to finish it this week, except for boiling water for the counters and the ironing and the.
All
and
right.
the
If you want Passover, it's like Shabbos, whatever date you decide, whatever time you decide it's coming, it's coming. Whatever date, if you decided Passover is coming today, that's it. You'll be ready. You're flying off here. I'm flying off there. No problem.
And I signed up, so Mirza Hashem, my friend and I are going to Chase Taub's 30 and 30 letter for Brangen at the Eye Health. So yeah,
So
so
nice.
all good things.
Wow, amazing.
There's
Amazing.
a lot to thank God for. That's so beautiful.
Yep.
Nice you're doing it with a friend. That's
Yep.
really beautiful. That is amazing. Amazing. God's giving you all those gifts. Being with your grandchild, emotional, going to the Rebbe, the spiritual, the Fabrengen, the health, to be able to do it all and enjoy it all. Baruch Hashem. A lot to say thank you for.
Yep.
Anyone else? Anyone else have something they'd like to add? There's so many beautiful things people share tonight. It's amazing.
Yes, I want to share. Last Shabbat we spent at ISU with Gabby, and it was at Chabad ISU. It was wonderful, beautiful, and the kids, about like 40 people came over for dinner. A lot, yes. Rabbi was singing and the kids were singing, and so it was so beautiful. Very impressed.
That's so nice. That's so nice. Gabby's in that environment.
Yes, she's a vice president and she's
me.
very involved. So
that's a huge, huge, huge gift.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So do they have like a parent weekend that you went, or you just said, I'm going? I'm coming, Gabby.
No.
Make room in your bedroom for me.
We stayed in the hotel. It's walking distance everywhere, but it was a parent weekend. So we went because it's actually the first time since we dropped her off almost 3 years ago. We went to visit first time.
Very nice. Very nice. Listen, there was this little thing called COVID in between. So there were reasons. Yes. But I'm glad you had such Jewish nachas. Jewish nachas.
The best.
Seeing the environment she's in, seeing that she's part of that environment, that she's a making it happen part of that environment. That's real Jewish nachas. You should always have that nachas from all of your children. That's really, really beautiful. All right, so I'm going to do now, very briefly, the wait just 1 second. Let's see what's going on. Sorry, look. I'm just going to do briefly from the portion of this week, which of course is a very, very powerful Mashiach portion, the words of the Rebbe to us this Shabbos in 1991. Then it was combined, as it normally is, the two portions of Tazria, what we read this past Shabbos, and Mitzvah, we're going to read this Shabbos. And there's so much here that the Rebbe is saying, it's almost, you don't even know where to start. But the Rebbe is speaking very strongly about the idea of Mashiach. The Rebbe says that in the Talmud, they identify Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Judah the prince, as Mashiach, as a redeemer, because he was completely pious and was suffering, was sick. As Yeshaya says, as Isaiah says, that Mashiach has to be sick with, what's the sickness? This Sarah sickness, it's the sickness of exile. And the Rebbe says that Mashiach now is waiting with longing eyes and bated breath to be redeemed, to redeem the Jewish people from this painful, painful exile, to be revealed as the ultimate redeemer, as the ultimate Mashiach. And the Rebbe quotes the beginning of this Talmud, and towards the end of this piece, it identifies if Mashiach is from the living, he's Judah the prince, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, perfectly pious and sick with a sickness called exile. In the beginning, it speaks that at that time in Babylonia, which is where the Jews were at that time, there were 4 yeshivas, 4 schools, Torah schools, major Torah centers. And each one was promoting that their leader, the head of that rabbinical school, he's the Mashiach, he's the Redeemer. And it says that the students of Shiloh said, Shiloh's the name of the Redeemer. And they brought a verse to prove it. The students of Yanai said, Yanai's the name of Mashiach. They brought a verse to prove it. The students of Hanina said, Hanina, that's the name of the Redeemer. And they brought a verse to prove it. And the students of Menachem said, Menachem is the name of Mashiach. And they brought a verse to prove it. It's very interesting because Rashi there actually says, it's not that the students made this up. The teachers taught it. These teachers of these 4 rabbinical schools, they taught that their names were the names of Mashiach. So what was the function of the students? To spread the word, to promote it. Oh, you could say, what's going on? I mean, this isn't one time. How could 4 different completely righteous people, godly people, all think they're the Redeemer? I mean, there's only one, right? Not 4. So the Rebbe's father, Reb Leivik, has very interesting insight on this. And he says that if you look at the 4 names, they actually spell the word Mashiach. Mem, Menachem, Shin, Shiloh, Yud, Yanai, Ches, Hanina. Mashiach. Meaning they actually all 4 were Mashiach. They all were 4 different elements in the persona of Mashiach. And if Mashiach had truly come then in the physical sense, only one would have emerged as the physical absolute Mashiach, Redeemer, because in his energy would have been dominant. But all 4 of them truly looked at themselves and saw that they were the energy of Mashiach. And what do we see their students did? The students went and spread this. And the Rebbe says that we Hasidim have to do the same thing. We have to follow suit. And we have to look at our Rebbe. And we have to learn out the names of our Rebbe and see how our Rebbe's names is Mashiach. And then, of course, when the Rebbe says Rebbe, he means the previous Rebbe, his father-in-law and predecessor. So he looks at the names of his father-in-law. His father-in-law's name was Yosef Yitzchak. And he brings 2 verses, a verse that connects Yosef to the redemption, a verse that identifies Yosef with the ingathering of the exiles, and a verse with the second name, Yitzchak, joy, a verse that expresses at the time of the redemption, that's and only then will we have the real ultimate joy. Yosef Yitzchak, the names of the Redeemer. And from then on, this was Tazria, Mitzvah of 1991. Every time the Rebbe referred to his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, it was always as the Mashiach, because that's what we do. We Hasidim follow suit. We look at our Rebbe and we identify our Rebbe as Mashiach, just as in the times of the Talmud, they identified their spiritual leader as Mashiach as well. So that's a major component of this talk in terms of bringing Mashiach by identifying Mashiach and spreading that news. The other major component of this talk in terms of Mashiach, and this is a very powerful talk, is learning about redemption. And the Rebbe explains that learning about redemption is the straightest way to bring it. The Rebbe says it's the easiest way to bring it, and it's the fastest way to bring it. So every time as we learn about redemption, we are making redemption happen. So right now we were learning about redemption, and that should definitely be enough. Our sages say, it's actually a debate among the sages, what is the most auspicious time for the coming of the redemption? And the bottom line is this month that we just began on Shabbos, the month of Nisan, most auspicious time for the redemption. We were redeemed in Nisan, we will be redeemed in Nisan. So we're in a very auspicious time, and we're right now, we just were learning about redemption. That should be enough already. It should happen. We should have Passover in Jerusalem, not next year in Jerusalem, this year in Jerusalem. We shouldn't only have to suffice with the matzah that see a memory of the Paschal lamb, a little bit of roasted chicken neck on our Seder plate. We should have the real deal and serve God completely as He and we really want. Thank you so much for joining. Enjoy your Passover prep. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank